welcome to the Swim Chats podcast. I'm Shona Riddell, a writer, former journalist and ocean swimmer from Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand. For each episode, I'll feature a different guest from our swim community. They'll be dippers, adventure swimmers, coaches and conservationists with one thing in common. They all love being in the sea. So whether you're a swimmer yourself or just interested in stories about the ocean and people expanding their comfort zones, I hope you enjoy these swim chats. Please hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So Nicole, welcome to Swim Chats this morning. Thank you for your time.
It's lovely talking to you, Shona.
And you do so much. So I was making a list of things that you do so I could read them out. So I thought I'll just quickly list them and then we can talk about them in more detail. Is that all right? Yeah, cool.
That sounds perfect.
All right. So first of all, you're the chair of the Friends of Taputaranga Marine Reserve Trust, which for listeners who don't know, Taputaranga Reserve is a fully protected marine reserve on Wellington's south coast. It was founded in 2008 and it's about 4 kilometres, I think. Nicole, you're also the president of the Wellington, no longer the president, okay, former president of the Wellington Underwater Club. You're the founder of Explore Your Coast, a project which is documenting changes to our coastal ecosystem by diving 70 kilometres of coastline in Te Whanganui-a-Tara, or Wellington Harbour. And you also have a new Seaweed documentary, which has just come out, which we will talk about in more detail. So to sum all of that up, you're a scuba diver, you live in Wellington, and you care deeply about our underwater kelp forests and marine life. Is that a fair summary?
That's bringing it right to the point. Really, it's all about me trying, like, I'm so passionate about the marine environment because I spend a lot of time there and I see how beautiful it is and how important it is to us, providing seafood and all the other things. And it's created this passion in me to bring the underwater world to the surface and share it in different ways and be really innovative about how we can try to get the underwater world into town, into a bar, into people's homes, through art, through virtual reality, immersive experiences, all of that, and connect people. And then you mentioned the documentation as well. That's the other thing is because we can't see under the surface, we really need to know what's happening underwater, and the information has to go to local decision makers. So one is we need better information about what's happening right in our coastal areas, and then it's about communicating all those findings, and not necessarily the science. It's just also the beauty as well of our underwater world and the diversity with people back on shore, because we're an island nation. We very much depend on our ocean as, global citizens, but in New Zealand particularly.
Yeah, that's right. And as you say, we're surrounded by the ocean, but not many people can or want to necessarily get in, depending on the water temperature. And so don't see all the amazing life that's underneath and the beauty. And yeah, so I love that you come up with creative ways to show people on land what's under the surface of the water. But I thought maybe we should start chronologically. I'm really interested to know, because you're from Germany, I'd love to know how you got started with scuba diving. Like, how old were you when you first went for a dive?
Ooh, that was in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s. Need to do the math in my head. Let's just say late 20s sounds better. Yeah, it's been about 15, 16 years really, so right at the time. And I was always keen. Bavaria, when I grew up in Bavaria, I was really lucky because I always managed to get out. I had a really wild backyard behind my parents' place. There's mountains. I could go skiing, climbing, mountain biking, and really right next to my parents' place was a river, and we spent a lot of time as kids in the water there, and in the bush next to it, really. And every time that was pretty cold, and there was, lots of freshwater fish, but not like that exciting, colorful marine life. So when I got a chance, and my parents went on family holidays, and anywhere there was like the ocean, I was always keen, to see something. And it was, as a kid, you get excited about like really anything, really little fish and other things. And it didn't have to be too colorful to really impress me back in the day, because freshwater environment is interesting, but also not that colorful. And I always thought it'll be great to go and start scuba diving. And when I had an opportunity to come to New Zealand for my postdoc at Auckland University, one of the things I had in my suitcase was actually a diving mask, because I always thought I'll do that. And when you come, you just have like one suitcase and gear, and yeah, right there the diving mask was in it. And then Auckland was really fabulous place to get started and get hooked on scuba diving, because the Auckland University Underwater Dive Club was really active, or still is, and they offered lots of opportunities. And I was really lucky, because I had the opportunity to do my first open water scuba dives at the Poor Knights. And the Poor Knights are this amazing marine reserve, subtropical fish species up off the Whangarei coast in the north of New Zealand. And as soon as you put your head underwater, even just on the surface, you see fish life, you see lush underwater forests, and it's just something else. So it really blew me away straight away. And even on my first scuba dive, you can't take a camera onto the training dive, but I had a little point and shoot 24 disposable camera. And we were waiting on the surface until everybody else got in. So I just pulled it out of my pocket and I took a few photos. And I was like thinking, oh, there's a big fish. And then the fish came closer and closer. I was like, what's probably not quite a fish? Oh, it's a shark. So the first underwater photo on this 24 camera image film was actually a bronze whaler shark at the Poor Knights, which was amazing. And then we put the camera, of course, away, and then we all started diving. And it was really weird, because we got circled by three bronze whaler sharks for both of the open water dives. And they got really close. And of course, the scuba instructor at the time was like, this is weird. They tried to shush them away. We thought it's great, because we didn't know any better. And I've never seen anything like it again on scuba, because sharks are actually, it's quite skittish. And I had many occasions where I went up to the Poor Knights, even free diving, trying to see the similar experience. And it's really rare. So you really do treasure those exciting moments. That's really amazing. Of course, and then
Well,
there was no turning back anymore. Hooked.
yeah, well, I was going to say, what an incredible introduction. Just like, no wonder you're hooked. You're seeing the best of the best on day one. So you've obviously spent a lot of time scuba diving since then. So here's a question for you. Do you actually prefer being underwater to being on land?
Well, if I had the chance to spend more time underwater, I definitely do. It's in New Zealand. It's involves a lot of effort, because the water, of course, as you know, is a bit cooler, and so you do wear a lot more stuff, and the time is limited also by water temperature to some extent. But it doesn't really matter, because even I had short dives that were amazing, shallow dives, deep dives, and it's just going to it's really about trying to see the diversity and go different places as well. I do a little bit of cave diving. That's like a different thing again. It's there's a whole, for me, it's the curiosity about seeing different places. And I find it quite impressive. If you think about New Zealand as a long country, and we all know how diverse the country is, between Cape Reinga, Tongariro, the Central Plateau, and then going down South Island, Fiordland, the Alps, and you get the same diversity underwater. There's the topography underwater in New Zealand in some places is just mind blowing. You dive along steep cliffs, or you get cavern and caves, and then you get all this marine life. It's not always very colorful, but sometimes you get these big schools of fish coming along, and it's just really impressive. And when you then start looking under all of those seaweeds and other things, you get this amazing colorful invertebrate life that just blows your mind. And that is really cool. And you never quite know what you see underwater as well, because you just don't know what swims past or what gets drifted by in the current, which is amazing too.
That's
And the
right.
other
Every time is different, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
And also, it's not just like the being in the water or looking underwater. It's also sometimes you have this lovely experience on the coastline as well. You get sunset, sunrises, dramatic. You see wildlife. Yesterday I stopped on the way along Taputaranga Marine Reserve because I there was this amazing flock of seagulls, and they were all like digging through seaweed that was washed up close to Houghton Bay. And it was just all going on, the old ones, the young ones with the different feathers still, the oyster catchers. And it was like all this cacophony of, it was incredible. And y- that one, I saw a penguin chasing baitfish in the project site where we did the kelp forest restoration. That was so cool to see. So there's a whole lot of things. And the other thing that I really like about diving and the ocean and the passion, I guess, like in any other hobby, you find people with a similar passion. And I think the seaweed people are quite special.
that's right. You find your community.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I was going to ask with Taputeranga, because for people who haven't been snorkeling or diving there, what would you expect to see?
Taputaranga Marine Reserve is amazing. Well, for one, it's the only fully protected marine reserve along the coast of our capital city. So we've got something really special here in Wellington. And when you put your head in the water at Taputaranga, you very quickly see crayfish power straight off the coastline. And that is incredible because you can't really see that outside the reserve. Outside the reserve, you spend a lot of time looking, and you're lucky. Along the coastline, we are lucky because we still get juvenile species in outside the reserve. And inside this reserve, you see then how these species grow up to their abundance and size. And I guess probably back in the old days there was even more fish and power like crayfish around, but the marine reserves really show how different it could be between protected areas and not. And because it's on Wellington South Coast, that's a really, really dynamic marine environment. If you think about how crazy the waves can get, and we just recently had this massive storm with 6, 7 meter waves coming on shore, and I always wonder how marine life manages to survive in the real shallows. But a couple of days after the storm has gone and the water's cleared up, you go back to the coast and everything seems to be so happy. Little fish are back in their place. But then you see how rocks are torn apart and how the seaweed grows sideways because they have toppled over. It's incredible. So the marine life along the coast is just so cool. And it's same, we've got all the diversity of species because we are in the confluence between different currents and different water bodies. So we get often the southernmost species in New Zealand and the northernmost species as well. So we've got that. And yeah, it's just incredible. And if you're really lucky, I know I missed out on that, but I know that on one of the days we had groups of orcas and they stopped by with each single dive group. That's incredible if you think that they come and check you out, so cool.
So close, so amazing. And I know you've had
Yeah.
a few encounters with octopuses as well.
Yes, I
Okay.
love it. Octopus are always good. That's the other thing. They're also in the harbor. So everywhere where we get like these thriving seaweed forests, we get a lot of marine life. Octopus in between, they're chasing all the little crabs and other things that also call the seaweed forest their home. And it's always nice because not every octopus, but some, when you stick around and you keep a bit of distance and you watch them for a while, they then go like, "Oh, what are you?" Particularly if you got a video light or something shiny right in front, and then you see like one tentacle coming up, and then it's usually more than one, and then you've got the octopus right over your camera, and that's quite a neat experience as well. And the other thing we get in seaweed forest, and we are really lucky in Wellington as well, is with our seaweed forest in around the harbor, they're home to seahorses. And seahorses, they camouflage in them, they sort of put their tail around them, and then they wait for the crustaceans. And particularly when you go night diving, which is also super exciting because you see another yeah total different mix of marine lives. They are out and they are on top of the seaweed and they're looking for prey, and it's so nice to watch. And that's the other thing, there's so many species that people, by chance take photos of. So one of my dive buddies took a photo of a fish, and it turns out he was either the first or the second one ever in New Zealand to take a photo of that fish, That's incredible.
That's amazing.
And that's here in Wellington Harbor, it's right in front of the Beehive, s- central city. It's incredible.
And when you say seaweed, it's giant kelp, isn't it, that we have in Wellington? And that's is it the northernmost limit in New Zealand?
Yes, exactly. So Wellington, because of those different water currents and influences, we've got this massive diversity. Overall in New Zealand, we've got over 1,000 different species of seaweeds, like from the little ones, at the bottom, often red and green, right up to the really large ones that we see, where people often go, "Ooh, it touched me," or "I got entangled in it." And up north, we get mostly the lush golden kelp, which is really interesting as well and nice to dive through. And in Wellington, as you said, we're really lucky that we are at the northernmost boundary of giant kelp. And you can really think about it. Giant kelp is called giant kelp because it gets really tall and it can grow around the Wellington coastline. I've seen it in up to 16 meters of water depth. And then it grows from 16-meter. Often you don't quite see it on the surface because it doesn't come up in the really deep areas. But if the conditions are good for it to grow, and particularly now going into winter, it's often you see it in big floats on the surface. And it's the same like we get in California, where you think about the otters building rafts and tying themselves onto the seaweed. So it's quite cool. And it's a real it's when you dive into those giant kelp forests, it feels like you're diving in underwater rainforest because you're diving down along, like pretty much like going down a tree, from the canopy down to the forest floor. The fish come in often. It's like birds dashing through the forest. We've got fish, and then you start looking in the yeah, smaller fish are hiding in the sort of understory, and then you see all the marine life at the forest floor, which is then often power, crayfish, and particularly the juvenile ones as well. So they're real nursery grounds. And all these little fish and critters, they attract, of course, bigger fish. So we don't only get the bait fish cruising around. That's where the penguins and the shacks are after. But then also we get larger fish as well that are attracted to it as well. And then you get this whole thriving food web. And then you get dolphins coming in to chase fish and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a real ecosystem. And the more you sort of spend time in it, the more you see all these different marine lives as well. And that's quite exciting. It's always every dive is sort of a bit of a discovery, really.
It's really special. And I know a few years ago was it you who created Project Baseline, which is sort of a citizen science project where people can film and document changes to the giant kelp populations around New Zealand, sorry,
Yeah,
around Wellington specifically.
yeah, exactly. So Project Baseline, Baseline is really it's an international a group where divers or particular yes, that one particularly was aimed for scuba divers. They can go back to the same dive site and take photos and look at changes. And what we thought actually in Wellington, what would be a lot nicer is actually let's just look at giant kelp, because I was really surprised after I was diving in California that we actually get seaweed and giant kelp in Wellington. And I was already diving here at the time, and I didn't really it didn't really click. So you sort of walk into the ocean, you go past the giant kelp and past the kelp forest, and then you continue your diving. But by diving in California in some of those like with really good visibility and very thick sort of underwater forest, I got back and was like talking to people, and then somebody said, "Oh yeah, we've got giant kelp in Wellington Harbor," and I'm like, "Really? How come we, as scuba, community, we don't really talk about this?" And then I thought, oh. we should really start looking at what the changes are, because it is the northernmost boundary. We already knew there are changes in the extent of those kelp forests depending on temperature, on the water temperature. And it was really something to start a project looking at how do they actually change. And I kept it quite simple to snorkeling actually, and just take a GPS snorkeling around a kelp forest. And that's something where actually we could, there's plenty of opportunities for people. It doesn't have to be always scuba divers, you know. Ocean swimmers could take a GPS and swim around a kelp forest. Kayakers could submit observations. Boaties, you know, so there's a whole range of people who could contribute to projects like this. But by starting looking at one species like the giant kelp, when you then start discovering all the other life, marine life in these kelp forests, you then start looking at it more as an ecosystem. And that was really an exciting journey to be on with a whole bunch of other people, really.
Awesome. And then was it about 18 months ago that you set up Explore Your Coast, which is your project to be the first person to film 70 kilometres of Wellington's coastline? So how, I know you've made a good start on that. How many kilometres have you covered so far?
So we've got 47 out of the goal to film 70 kilometers of coastline.
Wow.
And yeah, Explore Your Coast really came about because I could see the changes in different parts of the coastline. So with my head on for the Friends of Taputuranga Marine Reserve, I was really passionate about talking about how great the marine life has recovered in the marine reserve and how we can share that. As a scuba diver around the wider Wellington areas, we discovered amazing sponge gardens on a dive on the west coast of Wellington. I was like, well, people don't really know about that as well. That discovery actually led to a funding for the university to do a whole lot of sponge monitoring and mapping work. That was amazing as well to see that. And then inside Wellington Harbour, it was really about seeing and communicating. There are these amazing kelp forests, but we could also already see in the project baseline side that sea urchins were moving into the project area and starting to eat the kelp forest. So I had this contrast of these amazing, thriving ecosystems, places where the marine life is doing okay, and then other places where it really goes the completely wrong trend, and where the kelp forests started to rapidly decline actually. And I was thinking about how can we actually communicate this in a wider scale, on a more of a regional level. And over the years, I've done a lot of work with other community groups around New Zealand as well. So actually, Explore Your Coast really provided me with an opportunity to pull all of this work together to say, yep, we are documenting the coastline on a larger level. We are supporting community groups in other areas of New Zealand as well with documenting their marine life, but also helping with conversation and supporting projects that are looking at how do we actually, what do local communities, Hapu, Iwi communities want in their areas? How do you get the data you need? And how do you pull that through to actually real tangible marine conservation work or marine restoration work in the ocean as well? So really tackle all of these different levels. And then, of course, with Friends of Taputuranga Marine Reserve, we often write submissions on policies relating to marine, to the marine environment, marine management, marine protection, biodiversity protection as well. So we tackle all these different levels on the ocean, because we really have to change in New Zealand. We've got to get the importance and the health and functioning ecosystem, marine ecosystems, in the center of decision making. At the moment, the ocean is always of afterthoughts of things we do on land, but it's exactly the actions on land and decisions we make above the water impact the ocean. So really, that's where we have to create change. But we can only do this if local communities understands what's happening, and if they can see what's there and what happens to those environments, because we all care, you know. In New Zealand, we are so passionate about our native wildlife on land. There's lots of freshwater restoration happening, which is great for the marine environment. We are restoring our forests, weeding, trapping, bringing kiwi birds back. And that's all really good stuff, because that provides better water quality to go in the ocean. But in the ocean, the mindset still often is, oh, there's plenty there, our actions don't make a change, but actually they do. And that's just how do we communicate that in a way it makes sense. And for me, because I've got a science background, I'm really passionate about bringing community science, indigenous knowledge. When you work with Hapu and Iwi, is really important because they have this long-term baseline, again, the long-term knowledge about how their local environment is changing. And if we can help out as scuba divers with easy methods for people to actually see what's below the surface, that's great. And that's how you can make difference, really.
That's cool. Collaboration is so important, isn't it?
Huge. Yeah,
Sharing
collaboration
knowledge.
is really, yes, collaboration is really, really important, and it's a key. And there's everybody talks about it, and it's really hard to get a collaboration to the point where you actually have a genuine collaboration. But yeah, hopefully we're working on a few projects where we hopefully can show that this is possible as well. But all of this at the moment, all the work, the cost for the documentation of the coastline and other things is self-funded. So it'll be really nice to find partners and sponsors that understand the marine space and they can help us make like quite significant changes. Because at the moment, when we're looking at urchins and urchin grazing, it's a problem all around New Zealand where we influence the balance in the food web. We can talk about this in a bit. But in general, at the moment, the northeast coast of the North Island is ravaged by urchins. We are putting a lot of sediments in the ocean. If we start seabed mining in Taranaki, we destroy another quarter of the North Island's coastline. So by just those two pressures, we are starting to lose half of the North Island's marine ecosystem. That's pretty significant, you know.
A lot
So
of
we've got
cause,
to,
yeah, there's a
yeah,
lot of cause and effect, isn't there? And
yeah,
yeah, so this is a good time to start talking about sea urchins or
yeah.
canabarans. As I know, it's sort of the chain, the underwater chain. If there's an overabundance of sea urchins, then they eat the giant kelp, and then that removes the marine habitat. So, what is causing this abundance of sea urchins?
Yeah, it's like anything when you remove the predators, for like the top predators in the food web, then you create a change in the food web and an imbalance. So in New Zealand, the key predators for those urchins are fish on the reef, particularly snapper, blue cod, moki, and others when they start foraging in the turfy algae as well. And yeah, crayfish are the big ones. But it's so important to look at it as an ecosystem. What we do in New Zealand is back in the days, we introduced a quota management system where we were looking at single species. So we are fishing for snapper, we are fishing for crayfish, we are fishing for blue cod and all the other species individually, but we don't look at the combined effect of what it means when we start removing all of those fish out of the ecosystem. And the impact is that we are losing all the predators that would otherwise eat the urchins. And it's really interesting because, of course, there's the predators who eat the urchins straight when they see it. But if you think about the forest and same underwater, we got other animals that forage in the bottom. So, for example, when you go for scuba dive in the marine reserve, you always see blue moki, and they are munching around on the bottom and they're disturbing the bottom, that they're turning around pieces of gravel and other things. And the small urchins, they would actually hide, on the reef. So if they get disturbed, there is usually a bunch of fish around those blue mucky that picking up anything they can see is edible. So if it doesn't, like, if it isn't the urchin larvae that the fish gobble up by themselves, if the other ones see little urchins, they just go and crack them open. So we need all the diversity of fish species on the reef to make this happen and to eat urchins at all different levels. If we do that, the kelp forests stay in a really good balance. And actually, healthy kelp forests can maintain quite a high number of urchins. Urchins are a natural part of the reef ecosystem in kelp forests. But what they usually do is they start hiding because they know if they are coming out when they are too small, they get eaten. So they make sure they stay hidden. When we change the balance in the food web and we take all the urchin predator out by fishing, then the numbers of urchin increase, but they also change their feeding behavior because they know they don't have to wait for seaweed to float by, and they just get it when it's with the tube feed when it floats around. They actually start actively foraging, and that's when we see real quick tipping points. In Wellington, you it was really quite dramatic because you could see how the urchins were moving up the reef from deeper water to shallower water, and they were all bunching up like a line of lawnmowers against the kelp forest. And what happens is the urchins don't eat all the seaweed; they just cut it off right at the bottom. So they actually just mow the kelp forest like like chainsaws. They just go and move it off, and the kelp forest floats off, and really nothing stays behind. So it really turns from this amazing underwater forest into a bare into an area where there's only rock behind, because the kelp forest, if you think about what would be the root system on land, provides a real nice spot for soft things like sponges and other things to grow. But as soon as the kelp forest disappears and this root system rots off, those soft animals are exposed to wave actions and other things, and then they fall off as well. And that's really where you get this massive change from happy, healthy, colorful, thriving kelp forest to just bare rock.
Yeah, I'll link to some videos in the show notes so people can see what you're describing as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty dramatic. So you have a new documentary out about all of this called Seaweed: A Love Story. I love the title. So I'll link to the trailer as well. People can watch it. But so how can people watch the documentary?
Yes, so at the moment we are organizing screenings in Wellington. We are trying to get the documentary to other locations in New Zealand as well. It's a short documentary that really, like the director Rebecca, she's been incredible in pulling out how beautiful the diving in the kelp forest is, and the story around it. She's done such an amazing job. And so it's a short documentary that highlights the urgency for action, and actually shows how quickly things can change and what we take for granted, but also how important those ecosystems are. And really what we want to do is we want to encourage conversation. So what we are doing at the moment is trying to arrange screenings where we can have Q&A sessions with people who are interested in that, because it's not just the movie that is important to show the beauty. We also have to have the conversations to get people in the room, start talking what everybody can do, and build the foundation so people are open to actually stand up for the ocean and support other projects as well. If you think about it, in Wellington, I'm not sure why, but we've got a higher poaching rate than the average New Zealand. So there was, MPI just had, there was a big news article out on TV as well. In Wellington, when fisheries officers stop people along the shore, it's 3 times more likely they actually take illegal sizes or amounts of fish compared to the average New Zealand. So the harbor is really big. If we would, and the coastline, if we wanted to see change in the marine environment, we need the community to stand behind it. And that's really important to get people thinking about how do we ensure that our ecosystems are healthy enough to keep providing food for us and for our kids. And at the moment we're putting so much pressure on all of those ecosystems that they can't keep functioning. They collapse in front, in front of our eyes, but we don't see it. So we've got to get people on board across, recreational, commercial, everybody on land, because it's really important that everybody is starting to talk to their local representatives and decision makers in locally, on local government, regional government, and central government level. Because, of course, when you look at on national level, if you look at all the party manifestos across all parties, everybody's got some nice words about the ocean, but it never happens. And how many years have we been watching the decline? So I get a bit frustrated about that. But,
Fair
we
enough.
need
Yeah.
everybody to actually say we care about the ocean. We know there's great marine life. We want to see it functioning, and we want to go out and enjoy it, because at the end it would be super cool if you could walk to the coast all around New Zealand, doesn't matter where it is. You take your kids, within 10 minutes, you've got a fish for dinner, and then you enjoy the marine life snorkeling, you know? That's what we want. So, and I think that's what we should be aiming for because it's,
Was it the underwater explorer Jacques Cousteau who said, "We protect what we love," right?
yes,
And
exactly.
and your
Yes,
mission, I love how your mission is to show people what's beneath the surface and make it more accessible in different ways, because we
yeah,
all have different ways of connecting with the water, right? Even if we
yeah, exactly.
into it, yeah. And so,
So,
just some of the examples of things that you do personally, you have your virtual reality headset that
yes,
you take to different community events, and so adults and kids alike can put on the headset and feel like they're diving in the marine reserve because you've got this 360 view of all the beautiful fish and the blue water and the giant kelp. Um, and you've also put up QR codes along the south coast. So anybody walking along the south coast, which is Island Bay or Whero Bay, so on, can hold your camera up to these codes, and then you watch these amazing videos of the octopus. Like you say, this is your footage, right? Or is it
yeah.
mostly your footage?
Yeah, at the most, it's mostly my footage, but we are really keen to reach out to others. So everybody who's walking along the coast, who's got a favorite fish, we've got a few spare QR codes, so we could do fishy tales. So we can tell interesting community stories.
Yeah,
So that's the sort of thing we'd really like to continue building up on. And because yeah, we just want to show what's at specific locations, or if we say, you know, marvelous marine life,
yeah.
it's like, what's your favorite marine life in the marine reserve? Engage people that way.
Yeah,
And
involve the community. And
yeah,
you've also got your beautiful underwater photographs that I know you're creating a website to sell some of them to raise money for your explore your coast work that you do.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's ocean inspired art. And really, I created that for one is because I'd really love every New Zealander's having a piece of seaweed at home. And, you know, art is another way to actually do that. And it's just a really nice conversation starter because you can show the beauty and the diversity. And we've got a couple of things coming up. So one is I usually take the VR headset and ocean art to those movie screenings. And later this year, I also have an exhibition at Zealandia in August and September. My images will be up there and
Oh, cool.
available for purchase. The
Awesome.
South Coast Arts Trail is coming up.
Mhm.
And in November, there'll be another exhibition in the Thistle Hall with me and jointly with two other artists as well, all ocean inspired. So that's a really nice way to spread the love for the ocean as well and fundraise at the same time because
Yeah,
it's quite expensive so far.
yeah.
Yeah,
For all
and
the
it'll
equipment.
be really lovely.
What sort of equipment do you use when you're scuba diving along the coastline filming? It looks like you're carrying some pretty heavy equipment. What are you using to do your filming?
Yeah, so for a lot of the underwater, it starts really simple for explore your coast. When I'm trying to cover distance, I usually just use a GoPro camera because then you don't need to worry so much. You just put it on and then it runs. And then when I get a chance, usually I've got a small point and shoot camera in my pocket as well because you never know if you go and see something like that's a bit smaller, then you can pull the camera out and take a photo. And if I get a chance to actually spend time in the water, in the kelp forest, just enjoying it, I've got a small DLSR camera in a waterproof housing with strobes because you only get the amazing color out when you actually get light onto it as well. So yeah, but whatever, you know, it's really amazing. You don't really have to have like super expensive equipment, just with a small point and shoot camera that you can buy that's waterproof to 10, 15 meters, you can really document quite a lot of the marine life already.
Cool. And you're diving in so many different areas. Do you ever feel nervous? A lot of people coming on this podcast talk about feeling nervous in new environments or getting in the water. I don't get the impression that fear plays a big part for you in your scuba diving, but do you ever feel literally out of your depth in that? Yeah.
Well, you gotta trust your gut feeling to some extent. I think when you do that a lot, you sort of know what conditions are okay and what not, and you get a feeling for when you're relaxed. And sometimes it's like, oh, actually something, you're a bit more tense or something. You just stop and think, why is that? Quick evaluation, of the situation. Then you can go, actually, oh no, the current picked up and I'm a bit exhausted by swimming too hard, or actually the conditions changed and it feels a lot darker. Why is that? And then you can decide, what you do. Actually, do I feel happy with the situation or not? And a bit of respect is good, because you just got to make sure you're on your game. You do your pre-dive checks. You make sure everybody knows what the plan is for the dive, and you can take that from a dive that is in 2 3 meters of water, beautiful weather, kelp forest, or if you go into a cave and you do some cave diving as well. So you just gotta be trusting your feelings to some extent, and be prepared and have respect for what you're doing. It's like for any hobby. You wouldn't just sit on a mountain bike and go straight down Mount Vic either,
Yeah,
so
right. A little bit of caution is always a good thing.
yeah, exactly. And just stop, think, breathe, enjoy.
Cool. In March, we had what was New Zealand's first ever Seaweed Festival, which was really cool. It was a week-long festival with all sorts of creative events, from yoga to sea shanties to art. And the opening event was the sunrise seaweed swim in Island Bay. Luckily, the weather was beautiful. It was a good turnout. And I remember talking to you. We were both bobbing around in the water. And I remember you saying it was the first time in a long time that you'd just gone for a dip, that you hadn't been fully scuba diving with all your gear, and that it felt good. Yeah, I was wondering, has it inspired you to go for more dips?
I might just have to wait for you to take me out again.
I'll take you up for a
But
dip.
I
Yeah,
enjoyed it. It's always just making the effort, and it's not really that much of an effort, and it was really lovely, and it was such a cool crowd of people as well. It's quite amazing. Yeah.
yeah. It was very inspiring to see the number of people who turned out who were excited about the ocean and excited to be involved. And I know a few people wanted to sign up to do a few more community events, so that was cool. So the next question I was going to ask is that, you're always working really hard to build on awareness. You do a lot of community events, you do a lot of public speaking, you've done TEDx Wellington. Do you find all these interactions and community education, is it energizing for you? Does it get frustrating sometimes? Do you feel like you get enough support in terms of practical support,
Yeah, it's
emotional?
no, I do. It's really lovely. It's just so nice when you get feedback as well. When people come up after a talk and they say, "Oh, really amazing." Sometimes I wish we could reach bigger audiences, but that's a tricky one, because you give talks to a group of, yeah, if you're lucky, somewhere between 20 and 200 people. But I think you've got to find a right balance between level of where you can influence people. And it's just important to influence people in that influence sphere that you have. So, with ocean swimmers, for you, if you talk about seaweed, you're excited about seaweed, you're going to spark people. And then those ocean swimmers go to the next group, and after a little while, you've got all the ocean swimmers around Wellington, either passionate or at least aware of our amazing kelp forest. So we do need that. Really need local support. What I like to do with Explore Your Coast as well as we can do all these different levels of community action, and also finding community groups in other places to actually share the experience of how you can work with decision makers, with Hapo and Evie. So the idea is to actually scale up on a local level these actions. And there's a couple of really great projects where Explore Your Coast was helping out a little bit, but it actually sparked into quite big initiatives. Even the monitoring data at Cow Point, and getting a bit of funding to engage Mountains to Sea, for example, with a seaweed snorkel in at the Miramar Peninsula. That project where I had funding to organize the snorkel sparked the enthusiasm with Mountains to Sea to love Rimu Rimu, the education, and then later on create the restoration project. You know, you never know how these things actually spark.
Yeah.
What is
It's
difficult?
called I was just going to say it's called a ripple effect.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's
keeping with that
amazing.
water theme, yeah.
Exactly. The only one thing is that is always hard to communicate to potential funders is actually we need long-term data or we need local data. It's great if we do something, but we also have to support community groups to collect the data and then also the engagement with these different groups. And I don't think that's happening in New Zealand yet. So I was really lucky. I've got a Winston Churchill Fellowship last year, was able to travel, and I was looking at projects in North America, in Europe, and in Australia. And there was a lot more funding available to actually facilitate those projects. And some of the projects where private funding was supporting long-term biodiversity monitoring is really inspirational. And we should like I wish some of the aspiration would be here in New Zealand as well,
Where
to
does the
make this
funding
happen.
come Where does the
Uh,
funding come from in
private
those countries?
private
Private
funding is
sector.
really
Okay.
important. So local philanthropy, often it's either people locally who have a passion, or on a regional level, depending on the pockets of people who support something. And there's really interesting models, and people were equally interested in New Zealand, which was amazing to see, because indigenous leadership plays a big role, of course, in around New Zealand, in particular with Hapu and Iwi looking after their coastline and making decisions and being able to pull together land and marine as well, because it's across all of the Ruhr. And that was really interesting to talk to people as well, to see what happens overseas, but also how we can do it. And if we could combine some of those ex- expertises and approaches, would be really good. But that's one of the areas I think where we can do still quite a bit. And there are ways, because there are definitely ways how we could also attract international funding as well, if we actually take our aspirations for native species protection on land into the ocean. We could do something there as well. There would be exciting opportunities just making it happen.
Well, we have a lot of ocean swimmers who listen to this podcast, particularly in Wellington. So hopefully people are feeling inspired and galvanized to get involved. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, just even if they want to, everybody who wants to engage and want to see the documentary, for example, as an easy starter, um, we will set up a couple of events. The next one is coming up quite shortly, so might be a bit too close to the podcast mid-June. But there will be more opportunities, and people can just email exploreyourcoast@gmail.com. Then we can put everybody on the email list and the newsletter. Hopefully, we can on the next event. I'm really keen to organize some seaweed beer, so hopefully we can do more of that, and then we can also run some exciting events towards the end of the year alongside all of these art exhibitions as well. And those events and talks could really be like the first rebel for effect on other things, because we are really keen with Explore Your Course to hear from community groups who want to potentially host the movie screening or do an event of other sorts, and then just take it from there. And the other thing, of course, is really important to keep your eye out for any opportunity where you can say, hey, we need stronger environmental protection rather than weaker one. So anything that comes up around the regional long-term plans, regional councillors, just it's really great if people can actually engage with these opportunities. And it doesn't really matter, what people's personal choices are, but it's important that people engage and ask questions and make the decision they think is the best. And I guess if we can have like on the next movie screening, we'll have a local MP and a local regional councillor coming along. So there's great opportunity to ask questions to the decision makers that we currently have. And I think that's really important as well. So yeah, I think if we could
Um,
all become ocean champions in some sort or another, would be great. Share the
exactly.
passion is
Yep.
great.
I'm going to put lots and lots of links in the show notes so people can follow along with your work and get involved and learn more. Nicole, you inspire me so much with your energy and passion and dedication to championing the ocean and all of its marine life. So I wanted to ask, who inspires you? Like, who are your ocean role models?
Ooh, that's a good question. I haven't heard that one. I think it's the marine life itself. Of course, at the moment we see the movie Ocean has come up, so we definitely you can see the change with conversations with David Attenborough, who's now also the ocean champion as well. But I think you don't really have to go that far. It's actually local communities and local people who have that deep connection with the ocean, and I find that really fascinating in talking to people on the ground who spend all their life and who can tell these who can say actually 60 years ago, 40 years ago we saw all of this amazing marine life. And then just being in the water, having the adventure, I think is a little bit of that. The curiosity is something that I really love. And I just love hanging out underwater and seeing all that colorful marine life and the little things and the big things. And it's just in itself so inspiring to be in the water. So yeah, I think that's really the key thing that keeps me going. And that's easy because you know exactly what you're in for over the years. If I think about the ocean vertebrae or other things, I think about, oh, that seahorse that I saw, a couple of years ago. I wish the environment stays healthy enough so we've got more of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's
That
actually
connection with
driving me.
place is so important. And yeah, like ocean memories, I think, is what you're describing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Special encounters you have that you never forget and you want other people to be able to have them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, agree. It's completely like this. And the ocean is a fascinating place because everybody can build a different and a very personal connection with the ocean. We all have slightly different experiences, slightly different memories. Some people like to swim and achieve personal goals with swimming or others. On scuba diving, you could do the same. There's people who get right into the technical side and all the gear and stuff, or you could just bob around in 2 meters under the kelp forest and take photos, or not even take photos, just hang out there, and don't move very much. So the ocean allows us to connect in so many different levels and spiritual ways as well. And of course, for Mana Whenua, that's a total other different connection then as well. And it's interesting when you talk to different people about their personal connection. That's always something that is a never-ending source of energy and excitement and curiosity as well.
Awesome. Well, we've covered so much today, but is there anything else you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet? We still
I
have a
think
bit
we've
of
done pretty good. Yes, it's just
time.
I would just encourage everybody to sign up and yeah, just get involved and become that ocean champion. And same if there's an opportunity, I'm not sure if there's like principals, listening into the podcast. If we could show the movie at a school assembly, that'll be another really cool event that I'd like to do as well because kids have that, genuine curiosity for the ocean as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for your time today, Nicole.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Shona, for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Swim Chats. Please remember to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you enjoyed it, you can leave a 5-star rating and review, which helps other people find it too. Enjoy the water, and we'll see you next time.